Mr. Chairman, you may start.
Thank you, Glenn. Is this on now or is it off? It's on?
Sorry. Yes.
So welcome back, everybody. We're reconvening. We actually feel like a real television organization. Just one comment on that. You know, you do the BBG board meetings up in this sterile conference room for those of you who are here in person, and you forget that we actually are beaming radio out and beaming TV out all over the globe. So it's kind of nice to be in an actual real studio, David, with real cameras and real lights, and you can see all of our imperfections up here since none of us have makeup on. So anyway, as we mentioned upstairs, this is the first, hopefully, of a deep dive. We're going to go through every network, every board meeting. We're going to do a different network. The format that we've chosen today, which we may adjust in the future, is 45 minutes of presentation, followed by 45 minutes of a question. VOA, as kind of the oldest and most familiar of our networks, has agreed to go first. So with that, let me turn it over to David Ensor and his team for a presentation of Voice of America. David?
Minute.
Mogadishu.
Cairo. Massachusetts.
Korea.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the Broadcasting Board of Governors, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Studio 47. Thank you for this opportunity to brief you in some depth today on the critical role that Voice of America plays around the world and the array of programs, video, audio, and web, that we produce each week for a weekly global audience now estimated at 164 million people. I also want to talk to you about some of the challenges we face, and then I look forward to your questions and those from people here in the audience. VOA's broadcasts helped bring down communism, but human history didn't end there. Today, our mission is more important than ever, and many of the regions that we reach are critical to U.S. national security. In some cases, the work we do is dangerous. The journalists of Voice of America understand all too well what is at stake.
As a reporter, if you don't go to those places, nobody would know what's going on there. If I had not been to Gao, the world would not know that Islamists were beginning cutting hands of people. If I had not been there, the world would not know that they are forcing women to wear burqa under 100 degrees. I was the only one being able to do it for VOA. I took risks, but it's part of our job.
A torrid afternoon in Azaz. The commander of the rebel Free Syrian Army here, Ahmed Ghazali, is telling foreign journalists that security has greatly improved when he is interrupted. It's a story that needs to be told. Thousands of people are dying, are wounded, are suffering. The country is being destroyed, and the world needs to know about it, even though very little is being done about it.
Journalism has become a challenging task in Pakistan's northwest Pashtun regions. There is a sort of iron curtain raised by Pakistan's security apparatus and militants. It's too much difficult to have access to independent information.
Mukarram Khan Atif, Voice of America Diva Radio Shab Qadr.
And in this struggle, Voice of America Diva lost one of its reporters.
And by the way, Idrissa Fall, who you just saw at the top of that video, is now in Bangui in the Central African Republic, covering events unfolding there. A very, very difficult story indeed. So around the world, in places like Mali, Iran, Syria, China, North Korea, and northwest Pakistan, as we saw, governments or extremist groups try to limit the free flow of information in order to impose their will. It's a battle of ideas that's also playing out in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, Tibet, and Venezuela. By providing accurate, balanced information and the U.S. perspective, VOA helps people in such places to find their own voices. In times of crisis, we can also help to save lives. What I hope to underscore today is that VOA stands for freedom. We have values. We're not neutral. freedom of speech is a fundamental American value. Number one, the First Amendment to the Constitution. And putting it into practice every day with global programming is more powerful than any propaganda could ever be, and that is our mission. Now, let me tell you who we are. First and foremost, this is a people business. Our language services are filled with hyphenated Americans, Albanian, Chinese, Nigerian Americans. They understand the power of a free press, and they are role models. They, along with Americans born here, working in our studios and our central newsroom, are motivated by VOA's mission and willing to work long hours to achieve it. During the Cold War, when shortwave was our only means of distribution, Zamira and Isabella Cioccioli listened to VOA in communist Albania. And one night they set out with their brother here. They dove into the Adriatic Sea and swam to freedom. Unfortunately, their brother did not make it. But the sisters ended up here at VOA, providing uncensored news to their homeland. And today, social media is critical to our audience reach. Here are three more of our language service stars: Sophat Seong from the Cambodian service, Chao Tran from Vietnamese, and Adi Astuti from Indonesia. They harness the power of social media to attract large audiences. And then in VOA's central newsroom, you find first-class journalists like Jim Malone and Natalia Artanza and Chris Simpkins, whose reporting in English gets translated into many languages, reaching millions of people. In broadcast operations, we have people like Gary Jaffe, who sets up remote broadcast sites at political conventions, who wires new studios, and other work that is designed to make sure our programs go out with clean signals. So we have good people here at the Voice of America. I'd also like to mention that, as was referred to earlier, that this year's report on the best places to work in the government just came out, and VOA has shown some improvement. Overall, among federal workers, there was a 3% drop in workplace satisfaction. At VOA, there was a 6% improvement. So while we have an awful lot of work to do in this area in partnership with our workforce, BBG is no longer at the bottom of the list, and we intend to keep working to make more progress. Now let me talk about what we do. We basically do 5 things: video, audio, websites, social media, and mobile. First, video. We have 70-plus programs, everything from hard news to satire to Americana, call-in shows, health shows, election specials in Iran. And in Iran, our show Horizon, hosted by Siamak Dahanpour, is one of our most popular, with insightful programs, interviews with newsmaker guests like Undersecretary of State Wendy Sherman here. In China, if you want to see what the censors are blocking that day, turn your satellite dish to Weishe, a lively 2-hour news and information program that provides audiences what they can't get on state-run television. In Pakistan, we have a new lineup of shows, from hard news to, this is Weishe, excuse me. I was going to open up for sound there. Now we're to Pakistan. We have a lineup of hard news and the lighter side, Kahani Pakistani, that's what you see here, a program in Urdu that's getting a lot of buzz with our affiliates. It gives viewers in Pakistan a slice of Americana that they won't find anywhere else. Now, the second thing that VOA does is audio. And of course, VOA began on the radio. Look at this. Today we produce over 200 programs in more than 40 languages. Incredible variety. Call-in shows, health shows, jazz, plenty of comprehensive news, and special life-saving broadcasts, like during the earthquake in Haiti or the drought in Somalia. On the radio, we inform, but we also connect. By the way, shortwave today represents about 15% of our audience. It still plays a key role for us in places like North Korea, Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, and Tibet. The third thing we do is websites. We have 49 websites, nearly 500 million page views last year, and that number is rising fast. On the internet, video is a big part of the future. Our Russian service, which was booted off terrestrial affiliates by the Kremlin back in 2008, has now got this internet-based television show called Podelis, and it caters to a growing young audience in Russia's big cities. Viewers participate by Skype. They tell us by SMS and Twitter each week what they want to discuss on next week's show. Taken together, the sheer variety of our 49 websites makes us unlike any other news organization. By way of comparison, The BBC World Service, much larger than VOA, has only 28 language websites. And our sites have news you cannot find elsewhere. Just in the past few months, scoops from our Somali, Russian, and Persian services were picked up by leading U.S. networks and newspapers. Social media, number 4, is a rapidly evolving and growing news platform. Here in Indonesia, you can see that more than 1 million people have become Facebook friends with VOA. Vietnamese, one of our smallest services, with an even smaller web team, now has a YouTube channel that is one of our most successful platforms with about 2.5 million views per month. And in China, where much of our content is blocked and jammed, VOA reaches millions of people on Weibo and other sites that most Americans have never even heard of. In Iran, where the internet is frequently blocked, young VOA fans often access Facebook on proxy servers in order to watch our television shows, especially On 10, which is an award-winning satirical show that we produce in New York.
سلام، من آرش صبحانی هستم. خوش اومدیم به برنامه آنتن به تهیه کننده سامان اربابی که اونجا تو اتاق فرمان مشغوله و بقیه بچه تیم آنتن که اینجا مشغولن. منتظر تماس‌ها و خبرهای شما هستیم.
I can't leave social media without mentioning Steve Herman, the journalist that we in the building here refer to as VOA's Twitter king. This is Steve.
Many who lost their homes here were relocated to this area after a 1991 typhoon-generated flash flood destroyed their community. Now they have to decide whether to try to rebuild here or move on again.
Last month, while Steve was providing spectacular coverage of the devastating typhoon in the Philippines, he was also churning out 140 character reports on Twitter to his 28,000 followers, who include ambassadors, top journalists, and academics. And frankly, I wish I could clone Steve. I've saved mobile, number 5 in the things that we do, for last on our list because it really is our most exciting platform. It is the future. Cell phones, smartphones, and tablet use have exploded, even in remote regions. Earlier this year in Mali, when Islamist extremists seized many of our affiliate radio stations, VOA's Africa division showed how nimble that VOA can be. It quickly established Mali One, which is a mobile site that delivered vital news in French and in Songhai, the language of northern Mali. During the extremist takeover in the north, there were people on, for example, the streets of Timbuktu, who to the gun-toting Islamist fighters appeared to be talking on their cell phones, but actually they were listening to the forbidden broadcasts of the Voice of America. In Nigeria, our Hausa mobile site has seen extraordinary growth and has become our top mobile site, producing over 2 million visits a month. Also this year, with the help of the Office of Digital Design and Innovation, we introduced a new smartphone app. This app allows you to listen to newscasts, watch video, and sort stories by region. Users can send us news and images too. The app works in more than 40 languages, which is something that not too many news organizations can say. So those, in sum, are the 5 things that we do. Now, before I go on, let me try to deal with a couple of myths about VOA. See if I can respond to them, if you will. First, sometimes people try to pigeonhole us by saying that VOA is only here to tell America's story. That is not correct. Take a look at the VOA Charter, which was passed in 1976 and signed into law by President Ford. Task number 1, it orders us to provide news that is reliable, authoritative, accurate, objective, and comprehensive. Telling America's story and explaining American policy is also part of our charter, one of the 3 tasks that we have. Simply put, we are a full-service broadcaster. Where possible, that means a mix of local, regional, and U.S. international news. And without some local news in many markets, VOA would have almost no audience. The second myth that tends to crop up in our discussions is the myth of duplication. Because Congress mandated it in about 20 markets, there are 2 BBG networks. But in terms of programming, there is very little duplication, if any. If you compare, as I have done, for example, what our Voice of America and our sister network Radio Free Asia broadcast on their broadcasts in Burma and Cambodia, you'll be listening to apples and oranges. So closing one service, whether RFA or VOA in a country, would save money, but it would also mean losing something unique, and it would not mean ending duplication. Words matter. Now, what do we have to perform our mission? Currently, under a continuing resolution with sequestration cuts in place, VOA's budget is $197.2 million. That's $9 million less than when I arrived here. Here's how that divides up. As you can see, the lion's share is for language programming, as opposed to operations, news, and my office, which, by the way, includes advertising and creative services. This pie chart shows you that counting both federal employees and contractors, 92% of our budget is salaries. Now let's look at the green slice, which is $15 million. And as you can see, that's divided between travel, equipment, rent, advertising, telecom on remotes, newswire is very important, and other things. So in sum, the big cost is people. About 1,100 federal employees, and worldwide just over 1,000 contractors and stringers. So about 2,100 people all told report for VOA, work for VOA. That compares, for example, with the BBC's 8,000 personnel worldwide. We have 13 bureaus throughout the globe, staffed by Central News Division correspondents who produce content for the entire house, plus language service stringers around the world. By way of contrast, CCTV and the BBC each have more than 40 bureaus. Studios, well, we're in one. We have 4 full television studios, including this one here, and we have 6 smaller ones throughout the building. There are 50 radio studios and 30 digital production and editing suites. Our new digital master control can send out 12 signals at the same time. From the roof of this building, that's the view. And from the State Department and from the U.S. Capitol, in each of these places we have live camera feed capability, and we use those every day to produce about 1,600 hours of original video and audio programming per week. Finally, in this section, a quick word about New York. When I first walked into our 30th floor bureau near Wall Street, it looked a bit like a broadcasting museum. But now, after a major investment by VOA operations in the IBB, it looks like a major network New York bureau, which is what it is. And it's a great place to do some cool television with the Empire State Building in the background. And here you see Semak doing just that during the UN General Assembly coverage not long ago. Let me now turn next to our audience. And after all, that is the reason we're here. Voice of America, as most people here know, is the largest U.S. international broadcaster. The latest figures show VOA's weekly audience is 164 million people. That's 30 million more than last year. This represents 80% of the BBG's global audience. And since we sometimes talk about overlap, I want to point out that 72% of the total BBG audience uses VOA exclusively. Now, to be fair, some of the increase that we're talking about this year represents better counting in places we didn't before, such as the Philippines. But VOA also enjoyed robust growth in Mexico and throughout Latin America, as well as in Pakistan. And I would just like to point out that the cost of this audience increase was zero. The new figures also show that television for the first time is responsible for more of VOA's audience than is radio. It's kind of a historic change for people in this building here. And the 17 million figure you see down at the bottom on the web, it may not seem like a lot, but watch that space. You'll see a much bigger number next year. For example, here are 3 services that, where we've seen extraordinary growth from desktop audiences. Persian is up 67%, Hausa 49%, and Dari up 41%. But the real success story is in mobile, especially in Africa. Here are the top 5 mobile site numbers. And here you're seeing dramatic, surging growth. The latest survey figures show that our biggest worldwide audience, interestingly, and this wasn't true as recorded last year, is in English. 34 million a week. 3/4 of those, by the way, are in Africa. The second largest audience is in Spanish. Now our second largest audience. And here are the top 10. To put this in perspective, number 10, Swahili, 4.9 million. That's 3 times as many as watch Fox News in the United States on any given day. Now, given the importance of English, we've added TV shows like On Assignment that are building an audience worldwide. And we are recruiting some new talent to write for the English website. We're also planning on offering next year a new show called VOA Now. This will be a 2-minute, quick-paced video newscast designed for all our platforms, but especially designed for the mobile phone. Here's a taste.
I'm Andre de National, and you're watching VOA Now.
I've been talking about audience size, and of course it matters, but United States national security matters more. So under the guidance of this board, under the leadership of the administration and Congress, we spend much more, and we make much more effort addressing Tier 1 countries, such as China, Iran, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Nigeria, Mali, Burma, and Russia. We've devoted significant resources on these national security priorities. With your support, I will fight, if need be, to keep it that way. Very frankly, I should just mention while I'm on this that I believe VOA needs more resources for our effort towards China. The White House also wants us to work harder to reach more people in other East Asian countries such as Burma. We expanded our reach there this year by getting our Burmese news on Skynet. This is the signing ceremony in Rangoon. And that's a video dish provider in Burma that's just starting up. And we're on Myanmar State Radio with our Learning English programming. When she visited us, democracy leader Aung San Suu Kyi told me that the broadcasts of VOA, Radio Free Asia, and other Western broadcasts were what sustained her during her long time under house arrest. And when Myanmar President Thein Sein visited VOA, he took the extraordinary step of going before a live VOA studio audience to take questions. And just last week, VOA was invited to establish an official, fully accredited bureau in Rangoon. Now, I need to talk to you a little bit about affiliates. They represent more than half of our audience, and they are essential to our future. It's critically important for the U.S. to be an active part of the global conversation. It's not wise to let others dominate the airwaves in cyberspace without an American voice being heard. VOA has some 2,350 affiliates worldwide. We work very closely with the Office of Strategy and Development, adding to that roster. To some, we offer full news broadcasts. For others, we serve as a Washington or a U.S. bureau. This works especially well in places like Indonesia, with the world's largest Muslim population. In Russia, we also provide reports for the Russian Business Channel. Reporting, for example, here you see it from the Wall Street Stock Exchange. Our reports are aired on a primetime newscast which has an estimated 11% of Russians watching. VOA Spanish, as we talked about earlier, now has affiliates throughout the hemisphere. This year we signed with TV Azteca in Mexico. And the moment we signed, from the next day, about 6 million people started watching us report from the U.S. every night on their primetime evening news. So you might ask, in this time of tight budgets, are affiliate-based broadcasts still critical? Should we continue? In my view, absolutely. It's a powerful way to perform our mission. It builds understanding. It answers Chinese and other propaganda against us in markets where they are making inroads. And, oh, by the way, it's relatively cheap. And speaking of money, let's talk about our resources in comparison to some of those of our competitors. I mentioned VOA's budget's just under $200 million. By contrast, China has reportedly spent $7 billion for expansion of its media empire. CCTV has an annual budget of over $2 billion. They are aggressively building reach in Africa, Latin America, and right here in the United States. By the way, this is a photograph of their headquarters. They can afford pretty nice architecture, or interesting architecture. Programs from CCTV are not benign. If you believe their reporting, for example, then you would believe that the Voice of America was directly responsible for the recent rash of self-immolations by Tibetans, a classic case of blaming the messenger. Another major player is RT, generously funded by the Russian government, carried on 22 satellite and more than 230 operators in about 100 countries. And it offers a regular diet of stories attacking the United States. On the other side of the ledger is the BBC, with more than 4 times the personnel of VOA and 48 bureaus worldwide. The Beeb has the additional advantage, of course, of substantial revenue from advertising. Like the BBC, VOA is more than just a news organization. And one of the ways that we showcase America for the world is through music.
Welcome to Music Time in Africa, everybody.
Border Crossings is on the air.
I'm looking up Adam Lambert. That was Adam Lambert by request for Kumator Abo, who is joining us in Rwanda.
Your love is like a river flowing from my heart. Your love is like a fire that will light my way.
I've talked to Adele, Moby, Richard Marx, Gladys Knight, Boyz II Men, Natasha Bedingfield.
Hello, it's Beyonce, and you're watching The Voice of America.
Welcome to Beyond Category. I'm Eric Felton. I love the effects on the horn. Can't hear so much great music from you guys without wanting to get in on the act myself.
This is Jimmy Cliff. You're watching VOA.
Camina, camina.
Argelonia.
Oh, yeah.
So we have some fun with that. Willis Conover, who was the late, great jazz host on Voice of America, used to say that jazz is the music of freedom. A couple of weeks ago at the White House, President Obama honored the legendary musician Arturo Sandoval, among others.
As a young man in Cuba, Arturo Sandoval loved jazz so much it landed him in jail. It was the Cold War, and the only radio station where he could hear jazz was the Voice of America, which was dangerous to listen to. But Arturo listened anyway. Later, he defected to the United States, knowing he might never see his parents or beloved homeland again. Without freedom, he said, there is no life. And today, Arturo is an American citizen and one of the most celebrated trumpet players in the world.
And American music is still a powerful form of soft power for our nation, and it is a priority for this organization, Voice of America. We also have a strong reputation for programming on health. In Haiti and in Africa, VOA programs are credited with saving lives. And then there's training. Journalists around the world have benefited from VOA's expertise through training reporters that's organized by the IBB. This is another important part of what Governor Armstrong has called exporting the First Amendment, and one that I think has a lot of power. Learning English. No, sorry. This is the training.
Sur ce projet, nous sommes très flattés. C'est un projet qui va permettre au grand public de s'exprimer.
Juste, je remercie la formation qu'elle a à l'Amérique.
As I said, Learning English, some of our most popular programs here help people around the world learn our language. Or, in some cases, help them to learn uniquely American expressions.
Pinky swear. These are your pinkies. 你的小指. Pinky swear is this. Pinky swear. 你不是跟自己 pinky swear， 你要跟你对方pinky swear， pinky swear， pinky swear。Don't tell anybody. Okay, I swear. Pinky swear, pinky swear。高小姐。
OMG Mayu, the creation of the irrepressible Jessica Beinecke, has been a viral success for VOA, attracting about 40 million views in China. But it is just one of many learning English products that are connecting us with our audience. Now, since I became director 2.5 years ago, we've made significant progress in Africa. The continent now represents 35% of our overall audience, and that percentage is growing. We have several popular English to Africa television programs, and we're developing an Africa channel, basically on the cheap, using our existing satellite feed. The IBB has moved aggressively to install FM transmitters in places like Mali, where I also recently signed an agreement with an important new affiliate, Radio Kledu. In response to the crisis caused by the Islamic militants in the north, we were able to stand up a new Bambara language service. And the information minister, who you see here with me, in a speech as we opened that, became quite emotional. How it felt to him, the pride he felt, with the fact that an international broadcaster was now giving the news in his mother tongue. But it's in Nigeria, in a region troubled by the Boko Haram terrorist group, where we have our largest audience on the continent, more than 20 million people. Perhaps more than anyone else on earth, and I say this knowing that a lot of people here like their mobile phone a lot, Nigerians love their mobile phones. And in the coming months, VOA plans to roll out a 24/7 stream in Hausa called Dandalin. It's designed just for the mobile device, and it's aimed squarely at young men and women looking for news on the go and entertainment. It'll have a lot of different parts to it. Now let me go to documentaries for a second. Last month, on the 50th anniversary of the John Fitzgerald Kennedy assassination, at the museum just across the mall from here, I had the honor of introducing a 30-minute VOA documentary that was part of a special event that they held there. Here's a taste of that.
Many still wonder how the world might be different if John Kennedy had lived.
It's really sad. Our country lost a lot in November 1963, and when my father was killed. It was a lot, and I think we would have been a much better country had they lived. I'm not a believer that, you know, that out of tragedy good can come. I think a lot of pain came and a lot of bad things for our country.
The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world.
By the way, we were only able to show that documentary at the museum thanks to the amendments to the Smith-Mundt Act this year that were shepherded through Congress, among others, by Governors Meehan and McHugh, and also the then future Governor Armstrong. So I want to personally thank you for doing that. It was a great event. There are going to be many more like it, and it's thanks to your hard work that that's the case. This year we also aired a documentary on the Tibetan self-immolations. It went out in Chinese, English, as well as Tibetan. It drew praise in a review by the Los Angeles Times, and it drew a furious response from the Chinese state media. Here's a bit of that.
Tibet is a land of immense beauty, situated on the world's highest plateau. Its culture and civilization dates back thousands of years. But since 2009, individual Tibetans have taken to soaking themselves in gasoline, often drinking mouthfuls, then stepping out into broad daylight to set themselves on fire in protest.
VOA programs seek not only large audiences and impact. We seek not only large audiences, we also seek impact. And that is a pretty difficult thing to measure. But I think For example, of Shahnaz Aziz, who broadcasts on our Urdu radio service. Through the kindness of her audience in Pakistan, her program helped a poor young boy with blood cancer get treatment, a desperately blind man, poor blind man, receive a cow with which to give his children milk, and a handicapped man to complete a college degree and get a government job. So those are just 3 quick examples of one kind of tangible impact that we're proud of, and there are so many more. Summarizing, we have a clear mission, we have a strategic and we have a sizable audience, and we know we have impact. But we also know that VOA has serious challenges. They range from morale and personnel problems to resource shortfalls. We'll talk for a minute about VOA Persian. The challenge is meeting its full potential. We've had a series of management, programming, and reputation problems to deal with. It has been difficult. We've made significant progress, but more is needed. Frankly, I believe the past criticisms that Persian was, quote, bloated, unquote, are largely out of date. But the critics are quite right to focus attention on VOA Persian. It matters. We spend almost $17 million a year on it, and the U.S. government has no better way to reach out to the Iranian people. Keep in mind that notwithstanding occasional jamming, we reach an enormous audience on satellite TV in Iran. 1 in 5 adults, 21% of adults in Iran watch at least one VOA television show each week. Another challenge is for VOA is keeping up with technology. VOA's radio master control was last modernized back in 1998. The equipment went out of production years ago. Our industry generally acknowledges that broadcast systems have an average lifespan of about 7 years. So we need a way to consistently pay for updates in technology. For example, if we don't convert to HDTV, we will soon start losing affiliates around the world. Multi-year funding could be the best answer to this challenge. And then there's marketing. Our advertising budget is currently just $1 million. That's 0.5% of the overall VOA budget of roughly $200 million. By contrast, Deutsche Welle's ad budget is almost 3 times VOA's. No matter how good your radio and television shows are, if people don't know about them, your audience is going to be small. Look at this graph here. This is what happened to our online audience in Russia when we had to cut a particular internet ad budget back in February. Another serious challenge to VOA is the way international broadcasting is organized, and you talked about it this morning, governors. Mr. Chairman, as you know, I very strongly support your effort towards appointing and fully empowering a full-time professional boss, a CEO of international broadcasting. Working with our friends, we also need to reform our contracting system so that we reward contractors fairly and follow the law rigorously. VOA and our sister networks also need to combine more bureaus, stringers, and other resources. RFE and VOA have made a really good start on this together in Moscow and Kabul. At VOA New York, we host OCB, RFE, and soon MBN. There's much more we can do in this area, both to save money and, frankly, to improve our news gathering around the world. We also need to elevate visa issues in our ongoing dialogue with our friends at the Department of State and USIS. It's important to pressure China to issue enough visas to VOA reporters. We've got 2 right now, and that is not enough. It's also important for the U.S. to issue visas on a timely, reasonable basis for foreign-born journalists to come here and work for us. Within VOA, we are engaged in the challenging task of turning our central newsroom into the interconnected heart of a digital, multilingual, 21st century news organization. This highly complex reform involves a culture change that is not easy to implement. But we are excited about strengthening VOA in this way and creating what we hope will one day become the global hub for news gathered by all the BBG networks. We work with this difficult but achievable goal in mind, to make VOA so good that it's going to attract some of the best of the next generation of journalists coming on up. Now, people who know VOA tend to be firm supporters, but the final challenge I'd like to mention concerns our real bosses, the American people. Too many of them don't even know we exist. We need to do a lot more to reach out, to tell Americans how powerful this organization is, the amazing reach we have, the friends we make for our country and for our values every day. Eliot Engel, the ranking member in the House Foreign Affairs Committee, I think may have said it best.
Every dollar that we give to VOA comes back to us with hundreds of dollars of goodwill for America, hundreds of dollars of good faith in what America is and what it stands for.
The recent amendments to the Smith-Mundt Act may help us in this regard. More Americans may soon hear or see us here in this country. I also think it helps that VOA journalism is beginning to be quoted a bit more often by U.S. media outlets. Some years back, VOA honestly reported on the Abu Ghraib scandal, though it was a stain on our country's honor. Today, we are fully reporting on the Edward Snowden NSA story. As we do that, we only enhance our reputation for straight-shooting journalism, journalism that does not avoid the stories that our own government finds awkward or difficult. And doing that builds VOA's credibility, something our journalists, like senior correspondent Andre Dinestra, understand very well.
Our reputation as a news organization is based on credibility. It can take years to obtain credibility, but if you don't use basic journalistic standards, you can lose it in an instant. We have a charter which simply says VOA News will be accurate, objective, and comprehensive. That is the cornerstone of our credibility. We are the voice of America, but not the voice of the American government.
By contrast, don't go to CCTV for balanced coverage on the plight of the Tibetans. Don't go to RT for insights into the web of corruption around the Kremlin. There is a global struggle underway for hearts and minds right now. At its essence, it's about freedom of speech, and it's about truth. And at the Voice of America, it's our struggle. In closing, I'd like to just say that this job that you've honored me by giving me the responsibility to hold is the greatest honor of my life, and it's personal. Probably the most important story I think I covered during my long career as a journalist was in Poland in the 80s. The martial law, the rise again of the Solidarity Trade Union, the end of communism in the first country that lost it. And it could have gone either way. I got married while I was in Poland. My wife is here with us today. And I remember her father talking about listening to Voice of America. But he did it very carefully because he was worried about who might hear that he was doing so. Today, other parts of the world need our honest journalism just as much as Poland did back then. So as I say, it's truly an honor for me to serve as your director of Voice of America for this period of time. I can also say that the people I speak to throughout this building and elsewhere around the world are pleased and hopeful because of the very distinguished makeup of this board. I think we've made quite a bit of progress in the last 2.5 years, and I look forward to much more under your leadership. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd be happy